This is Robbie McKenzie, Youth Ministry 6.3 from Nehemiah 6.3. I'm doing a great work, and I cannot come down. I have with me Adam McLane from AdamMcLane.com. Also does a couple other things. I know he works with Marko and the Youth Cartel, and actually has his own company called, I think, McLane Creative, if I'm not mistaken. And so, Adam, kind of tell us your background a little bit, the brief version in youth ministry,
Sure.
and then talk about what you're doing now.
Absolutely. Well, I spent about 10 years in the local church doing youth ministry, usually in smaller contexts. Churches at 250, or even, there's a time where there's a church of about 100, but you all know how that goes.
Right.
That's kind of my background. And in about 2005, I created an online community called Youth Ministry Exchange. Just got youth workers all around the country talking, and then joined the youth specialty staff in '08. Before just last month, taking off to do my own thing with Marko. So, yeah,
that's pretty cool.
That's kind of who I am. Yeah.
That's awesome. And I know with McLane Creative, you do a lot of stuff with not just youth ministers, but with the blogging community and and things on how to get your blog to the next level, and also just I know you do a lot of graphic design as well. So
absolutely, yeah. Like actually tomorrow, I'm headed over to WordCamp LA to do some training with. I think it's like 600 youth, or not youth workers, about 600 bloggers at
Oh, wow.
It's crazy. I'm just a little intimidated.
Yeah.
A little intimidated.
That's good. That's good. Well, we're talking about today, I got Adam to talk a little bit about creativity. Creativity seems to be the norm now for youth ministry, and even for ministry in general. It's tapping into not only your creative calling, but also other people's as well. And so Adam seems to be an expert, or at least a knowledgeable guy at this. So just in thinking about how we minister to churches, to students, to whomever, why is creativity so important in the how and how we minister?
Well, I think it expresses, the core of the message of the gospel is creative. The way that Jesus came in the incarnation is in and of itself creative. If you remember over and over again, Jesus' disciples going, yeah, but we were expecting somebody not creative.
Right.
You're doing a lot of creative things. We were expecting a dude on a horse with a sword that was going to kick some butt. And that's not you. You're out to capture people's hearts, not to capture their bodies. And that in and of itself is the gospel is creative.
Yep.
And you could go into that, further. But so the church, therefore, should be creative. So I think that is an expression of who Jesus is. He created the universe. I take my kids to the zoo. I take my kids all over. God's creative, and so I think as we explore creativity and we unleash that in our ministries, people are in a deep way connected to who God is, but also deeply connected to what the core message of the gospel is.
There's all sorts of technology now and different ways in which we can use creativity for our ministry. What are some different channels that we can use, channels of creativity that we can use for our ministries?
Well, I think the biggest one is just get out of the way. A lot of us, myself included, we're control freaks, and that limits creativity within our congregation.
Absolutely.
I can't tell you how many times in 10 years I told an elderly lady, I don't think that's a good idea for our youth ministry to do that. What's funny is a lot of those, and they were fantastic ideas there. I was just kind of an arrogant jerk that didn't want to hear it. 65-year-old lady.
Yeah.
But so I think some of the channels specifically, I think there's something to vocations. I think Jesus calls us to specific vocations, even if it's not full-time ministry. And I think that those become channels or inroads for the message of Christ as we allow people to express those things in and through our church. But more specifically, video is fantastic for unleashing particularly students' creativity. YouTube is the number 2 search engine in the world. So video is like it right now. Right. We're doing one right now. Art, like just general. I love seeing painting in church. I love seeing during the worship service a person expressing what the Holy Spirit's doing through them as the pastor preaches. I think it amplifies what's happening in the room with the message. I think, drama, I think all sorts of things, all those become channels where we can free students to express what's in them, and in a way that isn't necessarily verbal.
Yep. Very good. This next question is a little bit hard to I guess, unpack. There's a lot of different layers to it. But this is just a curious question of my own. Do you think that a lack of creativity is either a major component, to a lack of student retention after high school? I know there's a lot of different layers to that question, but I thought maybe that a lack of creativity might have a part in it. So what do you think about that?
Yeah, I think you're onto something. I think I like the way that you phrase that it's a component or a major component. There's obviously lots of reasons why students are walking away, but certainly, and I think it goes back to I don't know if you went to Bible college or seminary like I did. There's a whole bunch of non-creative people in church leadership.
Right.
People,
Absolutely.
and I don't mean that in a negative. I'm not trying to slam them, but as somebody who kind of has, I'm left-handed. Okay, so but I was in classes all the time with people who were very straight-laced. Who, a good time to them was a Friday night reading a book. The best thing they've ever written. This will be controversial, but the most creative thing they've ever read in their whole life was C.S. Lewis. Things like that. Were very limiting to the creativity side of things. And so, if those are the people that are in power in our churches, that becomes a problem. And I think that people who are creative really wrestle with that, and they go, if I can't express what God is doing in me here, and I'm a creative, then I need to find somewhere where I can be creative.
Absolutely. In thinking about what students are looking for in churches, there's all sorts of different ideas that people have, all sorts of different ways in which we can get students to look at a church at least. What are some creative ways to kind of seek them out and to look for those students?
Yeah, I think I guess I can reference my own ministry, right? I think that what we see is just allowing them to be upfront and allowing them to really be, in many ways, be in charge of what's happening, either on a Sunday morning or a Wednesday nights or something like that. And just like I said before, just getting out of the way and allowing them to express themselves. It draws other kids in. I remember when I was in small churches, we were always like, dude, how do we get a band? We just need one dude with a guitar, and we just couldn't find one. And I think some of it was like, because I always had these students who were like, well, I play the trombone. And I was kind of a jerk and saying, well, you can't lead worship with a trombone. I'm looking for a guitar, because that's what the National Youth Workers Convention. So, I think you just have to be really honest with just the palette that God has laid in front of you, and say, okay, there are creative kids here. So maybe some of it's not going to be very good. Maybe some of it's not going to be to the quality that I'm looking for. But if it's of a true heart, God will bless it, and then that creativity expressed will attract more students who are more creative, and that'll start a refining thing going on. It's really fun.
Absolutely. And thinking about churches, and you said you served on a church that had 100 folks, a church that had 200 folks, and all that.
Yep.
How do we cultivate, I want to say, an atmosphere of creativity amongst our staff, volunteers, parents, students, in which the whole church, is just a creative sort of church? And I'm thinking a lot of what what Dan Kimball does and the Vintage Church, and I really love what he does, and they're a creative sort of church. And so how do we cultivate that type of atmosphere amongst our staff, volunteer, and whoever is involved with the church as a whole?
Yeah, I'll tell you, Kimball's book, Emerging Worship, I think it was, totally revolutionized and actually brought me so much hope that the things that I was feeling in my heart were possible in church. So I think that's a great resource for churches to work through. I think I wrote more in the margins of that book than Dan wrote in the copy. But anyways, there's a random thing for you. But and I think that creating space is important. I know, as somebody who's stepped out of the pulpit and into full-time volunteering is kind of the way I look at it. Right. Preaching isn't all that important, and I know that's offensive to
Sure.
people that are in ministry or who spend a lot of time preparing that talk.
Sure.
The reality is, as a person who sits in the pew, I'm there for 30 minutes and I'm, or whatever, how long that message is. I'm not learning very much. I'm not, if I look at that and go, this is what creativity is, then that's not helping.
Yeah.
But oftentimes churches have this space, to say, hey, we're going to have what if we had a community gallery? In any artisan, as long as it's not, naked people having sex, we'll put it on the wall. I mean, why not? I mean, the reason your church doesn't pay taxes for that property is because it belongs to the community, and it should be a place where the community feels served. So yeah, maybe it's you turn your foyer into, hey, we're gonna feature local artisans, and just we're gonna acknowledge anything that's beauty, even if it wasn't done for God, is from God, and just start to foster that within our church. Allow people to write poetry and put it in the bulletin, short stories or just huge. We do it in the kids ministry, but we forget that billions of dollars are spent going to movies, which are just creative expressions of storytelling.
Oh yeah.
Get into this idea of storytelling within your church. I think that creates that atmosphere that's just very, very attractive. And again, as people experience creativity, it unleashes something that's deep. That's something that comes from being created, is this desire to create. And I think it could really be a powerful expression. Even, look, dude, I went to Moody Bible Institute. I'm as conservative as you can get. So even within a conservative framework, this is totally possible. I know. As I was saying those things, I thought, this dude probably thinks that I'm like this, Unitarian, who's like, oh, you mean art? And no, totally. This is one of the most conservative things you can do, is acknowledge that Jesus has made us a creator. I learned that in Bible college, but practically allowing that, I think, will cultivate some amazing things, and you'd be surprised who it'll attract.
Absolutely. You alluded to Dan's book, Merging Worship. When we talk about resources for creativity, what would you recommend that I look at and others look at when it comes to being creative and helping our calling in ministries?
One of these, I don't know if you can see this.
Yep.
You need a notebook. I mean, I am constantly on my iPhone, right? Bam.
Yep.
But at the same time, it is not a creative expression to just constantly be texting and tweeting and Facebook. The reason I show you that notebook is I capture creative ideas all the time. That's the best resource that I have. The second best resource is getting proper rest and exercise. I'm dead serious. You can't be creative if you're tired.
Yep.
You can't be creative if you're like, man, I just want to go see what does the city look like from the top of that steeple, but I can't even climb that steeple because I'm too fat to get up there. Those are just being in good enough shape to express and to discover and to and not be tired all the time. That's going to free up the creativity. It's not the resource you're looking for. You're probably looking for a book or a video.
No, that's good.
There's all kinds of stuff. I'm inspired. I'm a web dude. I'm inspired by things on Smashing Magazine, Vandalay Designs blog, things like that. But those all come out of, I'm not tired and I'm not so busy that I miss that stuff.
Absolutely. Adam, hang on a little bit. I appreciate you so much for being on. This is Youth Ministry 6.3, Creativity. Thank you so much, Adam. I appreciate you.
You're welcome.